Three men were sitting at a bar talking about their wives. The first guy says, "My wife is so stupid. She went to the grocery store and bought $500 worth of meat, and we don't have a freezer to store it all in." The second guy says, "Well, my wife just spent $30,000 on a car and she doesn't know how to drive." The third guy, a blonde, says, "Well, my wife is on her way to Greece for a 3-week vacation and she must have packed 5 boxes of condoms and she doesn't even have a penis." An elderly couple was driving cross-country when a highway patrol officer pulled them over. The wife was driving, but she was a bit hard of hearing. Officer: "Ma'am, do you realize you were speeding?" Wife to husband: "What did he say?" Husband: "He says you were speeding." Officer: "May I see your license?" Wife: "What did he say?" Husband: "He wants your license." She hands it over. The officer looks at it and says, "Ah, Arkansas. I went on a blind date there once with the ugliest woman I've ever met." Wife: "What did he say?" Husband: "He says he knows you." Teacher: "All right, you little. Cows have 4 of them, but I got 2. What are they?" Johnny: "Legs, miss." A blonde calls her boyfriend and says, "Please come over and help me. I've got this jigsaw puzzle, and I can't figure out how to get started." Her boyfriend asks, "What's it supposed to be when it's finished?" She says, "According to the picture on the box, a rooster." He goes over, and she shows him the puzzle pieces spread across the table. He studies the pieces for a moment, looks at the box, then back at her. Finally, he sighs and says, "First of all, no matter what we do, these pieces are never going to look like a rooster." Then he takes her hand gently and adds, "Second, let's have some tea, and then we'll put all the cornflakes back in the box." A blind man and his guide dog enter a bar and find their way to a bar stool. After ordering a drink and sitting there for a while, the blind guy yells to the bartender, "Hey, you want to hear a blonde joke?" The bar immediately becomes absolutely quiet. In a husky, deep voice, the woman next to him says, "Before you tell that joke, you should know something." The bartender is blonde, the bouncer is blonde, and I'm a 6-foot-tall, 200-pound blonde with a black belt in karate. What's more, the woman sitting next to me is blonde, and she's a weightlifter. The lady to your right is a blonde, and she's a pro wrestler. Think about it seriously, mister. You still want to tell that joke? The blind guy thinks a moment and says, "Nah, not if I'm going to have to explain it 5 times. A young boy walked home from school each day, passing an 8-year-old girl's house. One day, as he was passing by, carrying a football, he couldn't resist taunting the girl. He held up the football and said, "See this football? Football is a boys' game, and only boys can have a football." The little girl ran into the house and cried to her mother, "I want a football." Being a modern woman, her mother went out and got her one. The next day, the girl is waiting for the little boy, and he rode up on his bike. She held up the football. "Nah, nah, nah, nah." The little boy angrily pointed to his bike and said, "Oh yeah, well this is a boy's bike and only boys get boys' bikes and you can't have one." She ran into Mum and the next day is waiting for him on her new boy's bike. The little boy got furious, pulled down his pants and pointing to his private parts said, "Look, only boys have these and your mum can't buy you one. In." The next day he walked by and said to her, "Well, I guess I showed you." To which she promptly pulled up her dress, pointed to her parts, and proclaimed, "My mother tells me that as long as I have one of these, I can have as many of those as I want." A lawyer, sitting next to Blonde on a long flight, was pestering her to play a game. "I ask you a question, and if you don't know the answer, you pay me, and vice versa." The blonde politely declined and tried to get some sleep. The lawyer made another offer. "Okay, if you don't know the answer, you pay me $5, but if I don't know the answer, I will pay you $1,000. The blonde agreed. The lawyer asked the first question. What's the distance from the Earth to the moon? The blonde silently reached into her purse, pulled out a $5 bill, and handed it to the lawyer. Then she asked the lawyer, what goes up a hill with 3 legs and comes down with 4? And went back to sleep. The lawyer did research on his iPhone, called his buddies, etc., all to no avail. After over an hour, he gave up. He woke the blonde up and handed her $1,000 and asked, well, so what is the answer? Again, without a word, the blonde reached into her purse, handed the lawyer $5, and went back to sleep. A husband and wife went for counseling after 15 years of marriage. When asked what the problem was, the wife went into a passionate, painful tirade listing every problem they had ever had in the 15 years they had been married. She went on and on and on. Neglect, lack of intimacy, emptiness, loneliness, feeling unloved and unlovable. An entire laundry list of unmet needs she had endured over the course of their marriage. Finally, after allowing this to go on for a sufficient length of time, the therapist got up and walked around the desk, and after asking the wife to stand, embraced and kissed her passionately. The woman shut up and quietly sat down as though in a daze. The therapist then turned to the husband and said, "This is what your wife needs at least 3 times a week. Can you do this?" The husband thought for a moment and replied, "Well, I can drop her off here on Mondays and Wednesdays, but on Fridays I fish." Dylan was practicing his golf swing in the front yard when, crash! His ball shattered his neighbor's window. Panicked, he rushed over and rang the bell 3 times. No answer. He peeked inside and saw broken glass, a knocked-over lamp, and a chubby man in a turban sitting calmly on the couch. Dylan asked, "Who are you?" The man replied, "I'm a genie." "You freed me when you hit that lamp." Dylan blinked. "Do I get 3 wishes?" "Not exactly," the genie said. "Since it was an accidental release, you get 2 wishes and I get 1. Dylan thought quickly. "Okay then. I want to be the best golfer in the world." "Granted," said the genie. "Now bring your wife." "She gets 1 wish too." His wife didn't hesitate. "I want $1 million every week for the rest of my life." "Done," nodded the genie. "And now for my wish. I'd like to spend a whole day with your wife, playing chess." Dylan looked confused. His wife shrugged and said, "For that kind of money, I guess we can play a few games." A day passed. Afterward, the genie smiled and asked her, "How old is your husband again?" She replied, 45. The genie chuckled, "And he still believes in genies?"